Hi, everyone. It's Amanda Rieger Green. Welcome to Soul Sessions podcast. Thank you for joining me today. We are going to talk about 5D consciousness. This is something I have brought up for the last year, and I want to hone in on what it is, what it means, how to access it, and better understand it, just to break it down simply. Additionally, I've got a blog. We will link it in the description and show notes so you can access the blog, review it, go through it step by step alongside the podcast, making sure you have the resources you need because this is the energy that is being introduced and it's becoming more available and easier to access, but it takes awareness and a bit of practice. Practice makes progress. Think of it that way. Not practice makes perfect. Practice makes progress with 5D energy and the integration of it and recognition. So we'll talk through that. A couple of quick things. One, if you haven't gotten the 2025 guidebook, I strongly recommend it because it works through the astrology and numerology. And there's so many good journal prompts, crystal recommendations, intentions month over month to really feel like you have a roadmap and a system in place. And what I know about it, because I have done this for myself for over a decade in terms of looking at my astrology, numerology, the astrology and numerology, and being able to activate higher states of awareness. So, this actually contributes to that 5D energy that I'll talk about today. That's a good tool. And that's why I created it because it's worked for me. It's worked for many people that I've worked with one to one intensively because I would create roadmaps for them on their personal astrology and numerology and the universal. And the guidebook is the universal roadmap, and it is on this platform called Thinkific. So it's digital, but it's super interactive and great to work with and access. So I encourage you to check that out if it's something that you haven't looked into. And even though we're in February, once April or May rolls around, I'll still be recommending it because I go backwards and forwards when I'm looking at the codes and the blueprints and the energies to bring into conscious awareness the patterning and experiences I'm having. And that accelerates my energy in a multitude of ways. It's really profound and it's actually just accessible and helpful. The other thing I wanted to mention, I made an announcement last week in the February energy forecast that as of March 1st, I will no longer be accepting new clients. I will be, however, still working with individual clients who have already been clients of mine. So, just to clarify, because I've had a few questions about that, if you are an existing client for the time being, I will still reserve spots and spaces for you all, but I won't be accepting new clients. And you can go back and you can listen to the why. And it was a big discerning decision, but it's been a decade and it's time for a shift. And so much of this shift is really in order for me to be able to offer more resources that are reticently available to more people, which is very exciting. But also, if you do want to work with me one to one and you haven't gotten a session before and this is available for you as a resource financially, now's the time to get in because I am going to hold a pretty firm boundary with that. And I'm saying that out loud right now to hold myself accountable because I'm a sucker and I'm a mush sometimes and a pushover because I go into my own fear and guilt and people pleasing, but I've done a lot of healing and reprogramming around that. So I just know what I can sustain and I want to be able to offer my highest light. And right now that's translating into more offerings on bigger platforms. So enough with the announcements. Let's talk about 5D consciousness. 5D is really, it's intangible. And I'm going to talk about 1D through 4D to build you up to this, just to give you your roadmap. But 5D is intangible. That's why it's a little bit tricky. And it refers to a state of higher awareness. It's a high frequency vibration that is synonymous with the heart, with unconditional love, with unity. And it's a state of being that is like utter transcendence, ecstasy, expansion. It is very elusive, yet when you feel it. And the simplest examples of this I can give you is if you've had a loved one passed and you've received a message from them, whether you've gone to a medium or you know that that loved one loved cardinals or butterflies or said, I will come to you and show up as a butterfly. And then just after they die, you're doing something and a butterfly flies up to the window and you have that moment and you bust open in sadness and tears and joy and connection. That's 5D right there. It's that transcendent, otherworldly energy that breaks space and time. Another example of that would be a random act of kindness. We've all been either the purveyors of or recipients of random acts of kindness. Think about when somebody pays for your coffee in front of you in the Starbucks line and you get up to the window and you're like, what? They paid for my coffee. My gosh, and you're blown away, awestruck, appreciative. Wow, there's kindness. Wow, people are amazing. Oh my gosh. And you're talking to the person at the window who's experiencing the same darn thing, if not even on a higher frequency than that. That's 5D kindness, like just humanity, connection, or you're listening to a song on the radio and it touches something deep within you, whether it's a nostalgic memory, a point in time, and it either just uplifts you or it brings tears, even if it is sadness, but it like breaks you open in a way. It's an energy beyond and it's expansive, it's timeless, but it comes from our heart center and the heart chakra. These energies are happening more frequently, they're more available. And I will tell you, for me, they've been rolling in more consistently over the last year. But I would say in the last 6 months, they've become more frequent. I will have ecstatic, uplifting, infinite experiences in the most mundane of circumstances regularly and frequently. So I've gotten to where I look for them, I almost expect them. And yes, expectations can be killers, but I am in a state of expectancy more often than not that something extraordinary is going to happen. And it does, even if it is very simple. The other day, I was driving and I was thinking about my mom and my dad. My mom and my dad are both deceased, and I was just missing them. I was in that moment of, gosh, I miss my mom and dad. And I was like thinking about them deeply, what they taught me, what the challenges were. I mean, I was just in a moment. I was driving and thinking and discerning. This is not unusual for me, by the way, to go into some deep discernment and state of awareness when I drive, even though I'm cognizant of the road, but it is my spiritual time. But I was missing them and thinking about them. And I was like, show me. I know you're here. Show me. And I looked up and two hawks flew very close to my window across the car, like the car window, and they were huge hawks. And I'll see a hawk, which is the messenger. In most indigenous cultures and Egyptian cultures, the hawk is Mercury, the messenger of the gods, so to speak. So a hawk is always an incredible animal totem or oracle message. I'm aware of that. But to be in that moment thinking about them and saying, I know you're here, show me. And I look up and these two hawks fly overhead. I don't remember the last time I saw two hawks together. And they were kind of dancing in the sky. They weren't fighting, they were just kind of doing this really interesting loop to loop. And for me, that simplicity of nature and harmony and the fact that the signs, synchronicities, and messages abound and are around us. When we ask, they show up. That is happening more frequently. And I'll tell you what, so I keep driving, I'm on my way, I'm uplifted. And in that moment, I utilize that time and say, wow, thank you. Show me. I am healing my fears. I know I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. So I get into deep prayer and appreciation mode in those moments because I'm working to, and working is maybe not the best word because it implies force, but I am conscientious of taking that frequency and expanding it, sustaining it as long as I can. So rather than about 3 or 4 fleeting seconds, holding it and sustaining it in not just 30 seconds, but for minutes. And I've been able to create like an endurance of cultivating and calling that energy in. So I'm doing the same thing. I'm driving the day. It's like the weather was beautiful. The sun was shining. It's delightful. I'm pretty high up. And then I get into this busy intersection. I'm approaching a busy intersection, broad daylight in a pedestrian rich place. I wasn't in the outskirts of town where there's forest. An owl flies in front of my vehicle. And owls are about magic. Owls are about seeing with greater perspective. They are about the darkness and the light. There's so much significance to owl medicine and owl wisdom. But for me to see two hawks and then an owl, and especially an owl in broad daylight and an owl in the middle of a pedestrian place, I was like, my lights are turned on. The world is turned on. It's so magical. And listen, I'm just up on a high. It's like I am just blissed out. That's ecstasy. That's 5D. That is what Joseph Campbell called follow your bliss. And I tell you what, follow your bliss eluded me for the longest time. I'm like, when do I feel blissful? What does blissful really mean? When am I really in that place where it's like, oh, everything is magical and great? So I couldn't figure it out. And I started searching for it. And bliss turned into ecstasy, something even higher. So follow your bliss, look for your ecstasy, but also remember that it quells at some point and things get, just normal, 3D, mundane. But after that, let me tell you this, because let me just continue the vibe. I walked into my Pilates studio, which is my happy place typically. I walk in and there were a group of women that I know, and this woman was standing there who had just taken an intro course and was brand new to the place. And I had just walked in. She says, "Do y'all really like this place?" And we were like, "Oh my gosh, we love it here." We not only love the instructors, we love each other. And there's 3 or 4 other women, and we're all like hyped up talking about how much we love Pilates, how much we love this place and each other. And we all started laughing. We were like, "We promise we're not being paid for this. We're not getting kickbacks. We just genuinely are like nutso Pilates people and love each other." So it was like, not only was I seeing magic, I walked into this space that generally is pretty uplifting for me, but it was like on a high, tripped out on drugs, happy in there. And I mean, this was just ordinary and mundane, but it was so extraordinary. And so I was like bebopping on cloud nine. Notice that. Follow your bliss, cultivate it. Let me go back to first dimension through the fourth dimension just to set the record and clarify, because for me, when I understand this better in my mind, cognitively, and some of the attributes and aspects, it's easier. The first dimension, and I've talked about this before, is literally the iron core crystal of the earth. And the iron core crystal seismically has been identified and researched, and it is larger than the moon and hotter than the sun. I've said this before in a podcast because I think it's kind of brilliant, but it's the truth. It is huge, bigger than our moon, and it's hotter than the sun, and it's pure iron. It is literally our point of gravity. It is our center. It is what holds the earth in place in a gravitational field. It is the literal center of the earth and the planet and what grounds and centers us. So if you're meditating and you drop a grounding cord to ground, when I do that, I drop it all the way down through the second dimension, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, all the way down to the iron core crystal. And I literally imagine my grounding cord is like tendrils of DNA, and the energy just, it runs through this iron core crystal. It grabs all the magic and magnificence, and then it shoots back up into my body. So that's the way my mind thinks of it. And I feel this energy surge and connection and stability, but I do it through imagination. But that's the first dimension. The second dimension is what is called the telluric realm. and it encapsulates the surface area between the iron core crystal and the surface of the earth. So think about that. That is probably millions of years of strata, mineral rich energy. It's the mineral kingdom. It's the cells and the biology, the living library of planet Earth, the archives, the history. Earth is like a living library. And that realm, the second dimension, is the mineral kingdom, the crystals, every bit of history of this planet. It's a physical space. The first dimension, the second dimension, and the third dimension are physical spaces. And also, like I said, when I drop that grounding cord, I imagine the grounding cord is going through like a, not a drill, but this peaceful strand of light and DNA running through every layer of that strata and giving it my energy and taking in its energy. It's like this heartbeat of synergy, the way I imagine it. And then it beats down into that crystal core, and then it comes back up through that whole telluric second dimensional realm. That's the second dimension. The third dimension is literally the surface of planet Earth, our 3D reality that is very material. And the interesting thing about 3D, and I'm going to break it down a little bit, it is material, but it also has some intangible properties as well. So it's the third dimension starts to change, whereas 1 and 2 are literal dimensions. 3 is a literal dimension, a material reality, but it has some non material components. The third dimension is Earth's surface, and it consists of our reality, but it also consists of duality, fear, ego based survival thinking, and our dual nature of inside, outside, masculine, feminine, high, low, yin, yang, as above, so below. You do you in that. So it is this physical plane of existence that really encompasses all of our survival mode. What do we need materially in order to survive? Food, water, shelter, relationship, community, money, a multitude of things. So it encompasses survival and work. It's very transactional in nature. And when I say it that way, that gives you the energy. It's transactional. And transactional is important. We are human beings. We are physical, dense beings that we move, we feel, we have a physical body we can touch, we have touch, taste, sight, sound, we have sensory perception. All of this is encompassed in the third dimension. We need all the dimensions, but we need the third dimension to be anchored in to this physical experience that we incarnated into. The fourth dimension, here's where it gets a little bit tricky. And the fourth dimension I think of as like a static soup. It's it is literally consciousness, all of our thoughts combined, not just my thoughts, not just your, all the thoughts. It is consciousness, thoughts, every frequency that we are transmitting from a mental plane, as well as all of the emotional frequencies we are transmitting. So it's the thought plane and the emotional plane combined. Sound like a hot mess? Yeah, it is. It's a lot. It's a lot. Just think, just for me in a general day, how many thoughts and emotions I have, and then think about you, and then compound that by the what, 7 billion people, and then animals and trees and everything on this planet. Every sentient being contributes to the fourth dimension. That's a lot. And it's intangible. It's a frequency that exists. And what's happening in the fourth dimension is it's attempting to become cohesive. And it's been very incohesive or incoherent and staticky and soupy with all sorts of mixed messages. You know, when we talk about manifesting and the law of attraction, things like that, and it's like you can say you want a Corvette or whatever you're trying to manifest, but do you believe that you are worthy of it and that you will receive it and it will be affordable? And do the beliefs match with your intention? We're always sending signals out mentally and emotionally. And a lot of times they're going in multiple directions. So the fourth dimension is complex in that it's intangible. It is a multitude of frequencies, but the energy that is coming from the fifth dimension that I've been talking about, that heart centered unity, cohesion, love, upliftment, oneness that is coming down through the fourth and into the third, it's helping to organize the fourth dimension. And I want to say something important here. For a long time, I was kind of dogmatic in not talking about dimensional reality because it's a very human, literal, linear construct. Even when I say to you, the fifth dimensional energy is pulling down from the fourth to the third, that is a very human, linear way of thinking. That is not a fifth dimensional saying. It is me using that language to better help you conceptualize the frequencies because it is so much more than the way I'm explaining it to you. But for me and for all of us, it's like we need a diagram. We need a roadmap. We need an accessible, understandable way. So when we talk about these dimensions and we talk about it in a very hierarchical way, first dimension, second dimension, third dimension, that's a hierarchy. And the fifth dimension is not about hierarchy, it's about synarchy. And synarchy is pure synergy. It's not heterarchy and it's not hierarchy. So we don't even have the language to truly express it, but we're doing the best we can and it works. It's helpful. We're getting there. But when you're in that fifth dimensional energy, there's no language for it. You all know what it feels like to bust into that realm of, oh my gosh, this is amazing because you feel it in your body and it becomes infinite. It's so pure that it's like going back to source, going back to God, going back and being in your divinity. That's fifth dimensional energy. And I'll go ahead and talk about the sixth dimension because there's from what I mean, and different people have different schools of thought that there are 9 dimensions, that there are 12 dimensions. For all we know, there are a bajillion million different dimensions because we live in a multiverse. So even thinking that there's just this many and this is exactly what they do and what they mean, that's a limiting way for me to explain it. And I recognize that. So when you think about this, you don't have to be dogmatic or any kind of perfect. Use your own imagination, your sensory perception, and your discernment along your path. But the sixth dimension is quite curious. It's like architecture. It is if you've got the fourth dimension, which is our consciousness, our thoughts, our emotions, and then the fifth dimension, which is just pure positive potential, infinite, expansive. The sixth dimension is almost like a holographic piece of architecture that writes the code for the third dimension. The sixth dimension is very connected to the third dimension. The sixth dimension is the hologram, the holographic energy. It's to me, I think of it as like a blueprint or architecture, and it's all of these archetypes. And if you want to think about it from like a futuristic perspective, it's like one of those screens in one of those movies where they're just everything is up in the air and they're touching things like it's a computer screen out in the open. You all know what I'm talking about in those futuristic movies that you're like, whoa, that's so advanced. That's the best way I can articulate or conceptualize the sixth dimension. So I will share this with you. With the sixth dimension, what I've done for a while now is I will literally, if I'm working on healing something, whether it's a physical ailment or something emotional, when I'm going to bed and I'm meditating, I will take Amanda, my human body, in my mind's eye, and I will send it up to the sixth dimension, the holographic space for cosmic surgery to be done or cosmic architecture or for my blueprint to be upgraded, cleaned out So that's how I work with the sixth dimension. But don't get confused in that. I just want you to have some awareness around these dimensions and planes of existence. And we won't go beyond that for now because this is enough, right? Just to think about and conceptualize, but certainly if you want to work with your 3D self in the sixth dimension, but incorporate all of the other dimensions. Ground yourself into the first dimension. Take in all of the second dimension. Be in the third dimension. Recognize your thoughts and your emotions come into play, your energetic body, and then that infinite heart space. And then you access the sixth dimension. I find that the work that I do or the connection and cohesion I create in the sixth dimension seems to connect more fully when I use my fifth dimensional energy. So, like, if I am lying down at night and wanting to, have an ailment in my body that is bothering me, that I'm asking my guides and usually for me in the sixth dimension, I imagine all the guides and ascended masters and my higher self oversoul up there, kind of like my team of light. So if I'm going to work with them, I like to be able to calm my body and come into a place where I'm actually in fifth dimensional energy, which takes a little bit of practice. But everyone out there, hopefully, if you've done some meditation, you can get into a state when you're meditating where your heart just opens and you feel expansive. So, with fifth dimensional energy, you experience life through a more unconditional space, unity rather than separation. The synchronicities will align, there will be an acceleration. It's almost like effortless manifestation. And you all know how I say the rules of engagement with manifestation and the point of attraction are going out the window. That's because this fifth dimensional energy is creating heaven on earth now, and that's what it's about. And when we're in that state, what we're also doing is accessing our psychic and intuitive gifts. Telepathy, the fifth dimension is telepathic. And if we are shifting into a new earth, a higher state of consciousness, we are moving into a place where we are going to become more telepathic. I've talked about this before and I believe it, see it, feel it. I'm not sure if I've shared this on the podcast, but my husband, Dennis, is super telepathic. And it's one of his gifts, and I am telepathic and very intuitive, but he and I are usually in sync. Last night we were in bed, and we were going to bed, and we were watching a TV show, and he literally said, he said, "I really think I want some yogurt." And not a second before that, I thought, "I bet Dennis wants some yogurt." I mean, we were watching a TV show, and I said, "Dennis," I was like, "I knew you were gonna say that. I was just thinking that." And, like, I mean, this stuff happens all the time and in the most mundane ways. I mean, it was yogurt, for goodness sakes. It was not, I mean, we have it happen in higher ways, but that telepathy is happening more and more for people. When you think about somebody and they text you just the simple ways in which we're on the same frequency band as someone, fifth dimensional energy will open up more of that. And the catch 22 with moving into that state is healing. Because think about this, if we lived in a telepathic, transparent world, anytime you walked into a room, it's like you're totally naked. People can see if you are a loving, healthy, seeking, expansive being, or if you are in your low vibe and your ego and whatever else there is. So there is this, for me, this incentive to say, okay, like I'm healing my judgment and my fears and my pain and my delusion, because if I'm moving into this state, I want people to see my heart and light. And if there's something lower, it can be resiliently shifted. In the fifth dimension, we're learning really to heal fear, ego driven struggles, karmic cycles in our cells, in our DNA, stuff that we carry that has nothing to do with our experiences today, yet it has everything to do with our unconscious operating system. When we're in that 5D state, we live and breathe and are in a higher purpose and service and joy, ecstasy. And in that state of being, not only are we bringing in more light into our bodies, it is transmitting to those around us unconsciously. And one thing I know about that is I can be somewhere in a group of people, and the way that I see energy and things come through, I can see people's energy. And you all know I've said this, I'm not nosy, so I know how to set my energetic boundaries and turn it off. But if someone's light is bright, it's like they stand out. I can see someone in their light and automatically I'm like, "Ooh, I wanna talk to them." And conversely, I go to this place for acupuncture, and my acupuncturist and the people in his office, when I walk in, they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're here. The bright light is here. We feel your light." And I'm not saying my light is bright all the time because it's not. It can be dingy, and I know how that feels. But when I am around them, they are very aware light beings and they feel my light and we talk about it. And it's just like a thing. They're like, "Oh, you're here. We feel your grace. We feel your light." And I'm like, "I'm so happy to be here, and thank you for telling me that I look and feel light." I need to be reminded of that or know that because, I don't always feel light, and I can be dingy and down, and I know what that feels like. But we can influence the collective. We are influencing this tipping point. In the blog that I have, I talk about different ways to activate your heart center and different practices and simple ways that you can cultivate this. One of the big things I want to mention and highlight is the sun. If you all remember back, I did the podcast on solar flares, and I've got a blog on solar flares, and I also did a solar meditation. Working with the sun is an easy, accessible tool, even if the sun is not shining. If the sun is not shining, you can still work with the sun. The sun is there, even though you can't see it. And I think that is even more powerful sometimes when you cannot see or feel the sun's rays, but there is light, even when it may be cloudy or a little bit gray. So, working with the sun is a beautiful way to cleanse and clear your energy field, to uplift, to invite in higher frequencies. Working with crystals from the telluric realm, crystals are telluric. Working with crystals is a really great thing to do. And one thing I would encourage you to do, if I've never shared this, and I don't think I have, we did this in my conscious collective, and it's so cool, is if you meditate and you put a crystal in your palm, any crystal that you love or you like to work with, I would suggest try it in your right palm to start and get calm, centered, grounded, get very still. After a little bit, and I would maybe turn some meditation music on or go outside wherever you feel you can cultivate that peaceful state through your breath and your body and your presence. But I will tell you, if you hold that crystal for a while, you will start to feel pulsations from the crystal. If you've never done this, it will blow your mind, first of all, because you're like, oh my gosh, like this thing is like pulsing. Oh my gosh. I mean, it's mind blowing if you've never done it, but it'll pulse. And then you'll start to recognize that the pulse is in resonance with your heartbeat. So the crystal is vibrating in sync with and at the frequency of your heartbeat. It is mind blowing energy, frequency, and coherence. But doing that, feeling that, the wonder of that will help you synchronize your breath, your heart, your body, and your energy field. That is a simple thing and trick you can add. Another thing is working with water. I did a meditation, a water meditation, where you can raise the frequency of your water by putting crystals in it or next to it, talking to the water, conditioning the water, thanking the water, asking it to be high vibrational, healing. Talk to your water. So that meditation is a great roadmap. Water is an easy, accessible thing that you encounter most likely a few times a day at minimum. Work with your water. When you take a shower, talk to the water in the shower. I know that sounds silly. I do this when I get in the bathtub. I'll say, "Hey, bath water, thank you for being so cleansing, healing, pure, uplifting. You are amazing." I mean, I say this stuff like it's kind of natural to me, and I believe it. I believe it, and it just whatever it does, it doesn't take anything away, it adds to. So even if you are skeptical about this, okay, a little bit of skepticism and cynicism can go a long way, but 5D is not about skepticism and cynicism. It is about something beyond the beyond. Listening to hertz frequencies and binaural beats are also very helpful because they help with hemisync of the right and left hemispheres of the brain. So when you meditate, finding some good hertz frequencies, binaural beats to help activate higher frequencies, brain cohesion, that will really help. And of course, your words, the words you speak, your intentions, your prayers, your affirmations. Like I said to you, when I had that moment with the hawks and my cup runneth over, in joy, delight, ecstasy, I immediately not only was smiling and beaming from the inside out, my energy was busting through space and time. I immediately began to say things like, "Thank you. Thank you that I am experiencing this extraordinary energy and frequency. Life is beautiful. Life is amazing. I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. Thank you for the love I am giving and receiving. I am joyful. I am happy. I am peaceful. Thank you." Like whatever comes to you, that's when you mantra that and you basically model it back to yourself, out into the universe, and down into your subconscious programming. So you're rewiring the fear, stress, trauma response that may exist down there in any of its 100 forms of delusion, right? That we operate from. So your breath is also an easy, accessible point is working with your breath and breathing. We breathe so shallowly on the regular that how often do you stop and take full inhalations and full exhalations? There are multiple breath practices that I incorporate, especially when sometimes I just do it because I like to do it, and I do it because it's become more lifestyle accessible. But I certainly use my breath when I feel my blood pressure rising or I get in a state of agitation or fear. I pause and I start to deeply utilize my breath to enliven and detoxify and calm and soothe my body. Speaking of that, you all know how I say bring the palm of your hand onto your sternum and rub it and soothe the sternum, or go to your jugular with a peace sign with your fingers and run your fingers down your jugular for a handful of times. That will help regulate your nervous system, and breathe while you do it. There are many other ways you can expand your consciousness, talking to your guides. Hey, guides. Hey, higher self. Hey, soul. Help me today. Be with me today. Hey, God. Hey, universe. Hey, prime creator. Come into my life today. Show me the highest vibrational path forward. These are simple ways to up your frequency, access that dimension, and to start creating a more cohesive awareness around this. And you will start seeing change. I will close on this note. Do you remember how I was saying that for me, I'd say the last 6, 8 months, fifth dimensional energy has been coming in more rapidly, more frequently, more reticently. And I've been noticing it and playing with it like really frequently, just saying, can't I just live in this state? Right? Can't I just live here? What I have noticed in the last month is it has accelerated. I mean, like rapidly. I am almost experiencing points of bliss, expansion, 5D energy multiple times a day. And the day can be strange and messy and stuff on my plate. And then when I get still or just recenter myself, boom, something comes in and it's just like it breaks things open. But sometimes what I've found is occurring is the more that I am coming into fifth dimensional energy, the old stuff will come back up. The 3D linear fight or flight survival panic mechanism, something will show up in my periphery. And when it does, I feel what I'm feeling, but I am expressing and responding much differently. My old trauma responses or reactions are starting to evolve and change. And it is literal, visceral, and quite literally, my husband said to me today, actually, because something happened this morning and I got a little bit upset and I wasn't yelling or angry. I was clear, but I was feeling what I was feeling and expressing myself. And he said to me, "Wow, I heard what you said. The way that you expressed that," he basically said, "That was really amazing." He saw something different in me. I didn't react, I responded, and it was powerful for him, and he communicated that to me, and he doesn't always communicate that stuff to me. So other people are reflecting back changes within me, so that's what I want you all to notice. When other people notice something different in you or how you've changed or healed or grown or matured, where you might have used to reacted and gotten angry or avoided or shut someone out, whatever your responses and reactions and coping mechanisms have been, when someone says, "Wow, that all happened, but man, you handled that so differently than you used to." Take that in, receive that, recognize it, thank them, but also recognize the traction that you may be making, because we're all in this together. And the more that we are all focusing and growing and expanding into our 5D energy, the easier and faster it's going to be, because it's now, it's happening now. And aren't we in incredibly unprecedented times? I'm so happy to be on this journey with you. Happy you are here. And please, if this is something that you think someone would benefit from, share it. Totally share this podcast. You know, I appreciate that. And the more you share it and the more likes and downloads that we get, the more resources I will have available to share with you. So thank you so much for joining me, everyone. Be well.